Hello, this is Mrs. Gonzalez joining you once more for this week's SEL Spotlight. Thank you so much for taking the time to view today, and we're focusing on understanding nonverbal communication. Did you know that according to research, every day the average person actually speaks at least 7,000 words? Many speak more than that, of course, but that's the average. And beyond what our words say to others, we also communicate without using words, or what's called nonverbal communication or body language. So we'll take a look at how these nonverbal cues or signals are equally as important as what we verbalize. Let's look at animals for a bit. Did you know that certain animals communicate nonverbally? Maybe you've noticed your dog wagging its tail vigorously to show that it's happy to see you. Or did you know that when a deer shows the white of its tail, it's signaling danger? And how about a horse that flattens its ears against its head? Did you know that it means the horse is telling you that it's angry? And then lastly, we have our penguin friend here. When penguins are trying to look for a girlfriend or boyfriend, they bow to each other. So that bow is a signal of courtship. What are some other examples of nonverbal communication or communication without words that you've seen in your pets? You may have guessed that we humans also communicate with nonverbal messages. So I want to shift your focus a little bit to silent movies. Some of you may be familiar with silent movies and some of you may not. So I'll give you a basic description of silent movies. They were the first movies that were created and they did not have any sound. They were black and white, and the audience never heard the actors speak. The background music was actually played live by someone on a piano playing in the movie theater where the movie was being shown. And some of the information, as you can see in the examples here, some of the information about the story was actually shown in writing on the screen between the different scenes. So you would see, gasp, or the villain boarded the train or boards the train. So how do you think the actors told the story if they could not be heard speaking? Do you think it was easy or difficult for the actors to communicate without words? Try it out. Give it a try. Using gestures, facial expressions, body postures, show how you would communicate anger, boredom, happiness, and surprise. How would you communicate an entire message like, it's okay? What time is it? And I'm sorry. These nonverbal communication examples are pretty obvious to make meaning of, right? We can say that they're pretty effective body language. Like it would be easy for someone to understand what we were trying to convey. But on the flip side of these, are the messages that we might be sending that are not so easy for others to understand. And oftentimes, those misunderstandings are actually a result of different cultural norms, which we'll look at a little bit in a few seconds here. But it's important to be aware not only of our nonverbal messages that we're sending out, but those that we're sending out in the context of the culture to avoid any misunderstandings. And I'll give you an example that I think it'll make a little bit more sense in a bit, but sometimes really it's not just what you say, but the way that you say it that can send messages to others, right? So another way to say this is it's what you don't say, right? And for some people, it's what you don't say that counts. So what are some of the ways that nonverbal communication happens? Let's take a look. So we have facial expressions, gestures, body posture, and I want to show you, check out this example of me telling you exactly the same words, but with different body language, okay? So I'll click on the video here to play it.
I was late today because my car wouldn't start. I was late today because my car wouldn't start.
So I told you exactly the same words in both of those I said it twice, right? Same words, exactly the same words. Why did it seem like I wasn't telling the truth the second time I said the words. Was it my lack of eye contact or hesitation to speak? Probably. Eye contact or lack of it is actually pretty powerful, and it sends a strong message. So we're going to add that one to our list. Eye contact is a way of nonverbal communication. And think about it. When someone you're speaking to gives you that direct eye contact, it really sends the message that you have their full attention, right? So that's been added here to our list. And one thing that I will also add, kind of a little side note, touching back on the cultural context, when you have nonverbal communication in like a different culture, it may signal, like a child looking at an adult directly in the eyes is actually a signal of like disrespect. So again, this, hopefully that example puts that statement into perspective, where that nonverbal communication, depending on the cultural context, can be interpreted as disrespect, right? And that's where we have that miscommunication happen. So another thing where we experience miscommunication is when our words and our body language don't match or they conflict. Our body language can be sending messages that are different from the words that we're speaking, right? So say you look at someone that is slouched and frowning, like my friend here on the screen. He tells you, "I'm really happy to be here today." Would you believe him? He's verbalizing, he's telling you that he's happy with his words, but his body language is saying something very different, right? So nonverbal communication is extremely important. Again, going back to it's what you don't say that counts, right? Nonverbal communication is extremely important because we send just as many nonverbal messages as we do verbal ones. And sometimes our bodies may tell a different story than the one coming out of our mouths. When this happens, which do you think people will believe or trust in? So if we want people to understand us, right, we have to make sure our words and actions communicate a consistent message. Another, kind of going back to the eye contact, if you're talking to someone, you're in conversation with someone and you're looking away, well, the message that you may be sending with your nonverbal communication is, I'm not paying attention, or I'm not interested in what you have to say, but you might be, except your nonverbal communication is not communicating that, so it's in conflict. So I'll leave you with some key points here that I want to make sure that are clear as we wrap up. Number one, communication happens through actions as well as words, so be aware of your body language. And then number two, if you want to be understood correctly, present the same message with your words and with your body. Okay? So I do want to thank you very much for joining us for this week's SEL Spotlight. Remember, actions speak louder than words, and I hope that you found this information very useful to you today. I will see you next week.